and it leads us to the next phase of this conversation, which is about responsible consumption and production. So we've understood that consumer opinions is an issue, psychology is an issue, and I think we've really unpacked that it's quite deep rooted, and getting brands to have the right kind of message and relationship with consumers might be, from my perspective, might be a good place to start. In terms of the global fashion marketplace, we're promoting responsible consumption and production. So I just want to, with a few quotes again from Mark, have a discussion here, and some more people can contribute. What is responsible consumption? So my view is that brands and consumers are both responsible. So that's why I've chosen goal number 12 from the Global Sustainable Development Goals. So production, responsible production, an example that Caitlin was giving was what they're doing at Blue Rinse. And I think responsible consumption would happen with consumers if they knew more about what is happening with the products, how they're produced, and where they go at the end of their life cycle. I think brands sharing those kind of messages about what's going on behind the scenes would be a powerful place to start. So, Mark, what do you think about responsible consumption and production? I've just given my perspective.
I think it's really interesting when we talk about brands and retailers. I've always looked at brands and retailers being at the interface between the production side and the consumption side. So brands and retailers are working with, and I spent most of my working career sort of looking back at the supply chain and working out what's going on in production. I was a real machine freak. I just love watching all the textile machines and how things are created. But retailers have to get that fine balance between trying to manage that production process in the most environmentally, socially conscious way, but at the same time still delivering to the consumer what they want and what they desire. And I think it's really interesting that when we talk about responsible production and consumption, there are really, really interesting hotspots within the industry where really positive stuff is going on. And this is one of the myths I try that often gets floated around, that, you know, the fashion industry is a terrible industry and nothing is happening. We're just carrying on as we used to. And actually, at every part of the process, from growing cotton in places like Gujarat in India, producing polyester fibers in the States and in China, all the way through the processes of spinning, weaving, knitting, dyeing and finishing, all the way through to that end point when the products are ready to be shipped to the UK or their destination market. There's some really interesting best practice that's going on that has significant reductions in carbon, significant reductions in water use and chemical reliance, significant improvements in people's lifestyles. There's things like the Better Cotton Initiative that are going on, BCI Cotton, which has been created to improve the livelihoods of farmers around the world, and at the same time improving the environment. So there's some really interesting hotspots on that production side. And I think the challenge that I see for the industry is there's not enough people using the latest best practice, there's not enough people investing in the latest technology to get that shift to happen. So you mentioned, you know, we've got 10 years until 2030. Well, I think it was a year and a half ago, people were saying that we've got 12 years left before climate change really is irreversible. So I think we've got 10 and a half years to go. And the way I look at the industry is there's some really positive things happening on the production side, but it's not happening deep enough and fast enough across the whole of the industry. So we've got responsible production on one side, and that's about managing those environmental and social issues on behalf of the consumer. And then on the other side is trying to work out how we deliver to the consumer what they want and what they need, but matching it up to those production limitations that we've got. And there's lots of interesting hotspots of activity going on there in terms of new business models. So this idea of remaking, upcycling, the idea of business models built around this idea that we're actually at peak consumption. We're going to stop buying stuff and actually start leasing stuff and sharing stuff. This idea that sharing economy may come through. I don't quite know how you would do that for things like lingerie, And then, there's a big challenge there, underwear. But there are some opportunities with bridal wear. There's lots of models now where that is becoming a really interesting model. And actually people are being quite proud of the idea that I'm wearing a wedding dress or wedding outfit that's been worn by someone else, and it'll be worn by someone else again. And it's trying to work out how you market that and communicate that to your market segment in a way that reinforces your brand identity and provides real value to the consumer, rather than it actually watering down your brand and your connection. So that responsible consumption and production, I think, does go together. And the research that we're looking at is that systematic understanding of those relationships, and that's the really important thing. You can't do one without connecting with the other.